Support for Donnybrook is provided in part by Design Air Heating and Cooling.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. As always, too many topics, too little time, so let's get to the introductions and then get rolling, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese. We welcome back Bill McClellan from vacation. Of course, he's with the STLtoday.com and the Post-Dispatch. Sarah Fenske from the 314 podcast and St. Louis Magazine. And we also welcome from St. Louis Magazine, the St. Louis American, Alvin, Reid. Okay.
Don't tell him yet, Sarah.
No, sorry.
He's been promoted. What?
Or demoted, however you look at it. I don't know.
Cat bag.
One of them.
Bill McClellan, great
St.
to have
Louis
you back.
American.
Okay, let's start this program, shall we? Bill, you grew up in the land of Lincoln.
I did.
And this week, I thought it was a rather extraordinary speech by the governor of the state of Illinois. He was in New Hampshire, which we all know has presidential implications because it's the first in the nation primary. And there was Governor J.B. Pritzker telling Democrats, hey, you got to get involved, but just not involved. You have to engage in mass protest, and you have to disrupt, and you have to get out the megaphones, and you can't give Republicans a moment of peace. Given what Donald Trump said on January the 6th, a couple of years ago, exhorting people to action, don't you think this was kind of reckless on the part of Governor Pritzker?
No, I don't think it was reckless. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with it. I think that if Donald Trump is taking the country off a cliff, the Democrats should let him go off the cliff. But as far as Governor Pritzker, I think he's just trying to make a name and hoping that he can run in 2028. And I just don't think that, I think we'd elect a woman before we'd elect a man overweight. I mean, look what happened with Chris Christie. So I look and I think, well, poor Governor Pritzker has to do something.
Well, you know, this time, at this exact time last week, we were discussing this, and I think I said, like, nah, I don't think he's going to run for president, or we just debating it. And he must have had that speech in his pocket while we were talking, because he unleashed this on Sunday. And all of a sudden, like, I'd vote for that guy. Because, you know, some of the things that are being said and a lot of the things that are being done, I'm taking personally. You know, the man has basically, I think, declared war on a lot of Americans, especially
Trump,
Black
not
Americans.
Pritzker.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
And so as a result, hey, I'm just kind of like, look, all bets are off, okay? Yeah, people have to do what they feel is necessary to do to stop this. And I'm with him. Now, by mass protest, he means large numbers of people. All right.
What does he mean by disrupt?
Disruption could simply mean go to your city council meeting or whatever meeting and say, like, hey, you know what I'd like to know? Where's Ann Wagner? Or why are we doing this? Go to your school board and say, like, yeah, I'm going to talk and I'm using my whole 5 minutes.
And it could mean January 6th,
but
too.
it could mean a lot of things.
It could
okay?
be. That's why I think he should be specific. He's a leader. And I also think he's kind of pushing it off, Alvin, onto others. Why aren't leaders like Pritzker and the other governors and the senators and university presidents stepping up and working?
Because only we, the people, can stop this mess. This is not a governmental leader.
There is a vacuum in the Democratic Party. There is clearly a vacuum in the Democratic Party. And go ahead and just thrill me with those two words that you said earlier. When you heard what he was doing, you said what?
I said I'd vote for him.
No.
But
before that, you said Wendy's right.
Whoa, I did. Yes, that was it. You're right. Wendy was right. Yes.
Because last week I begged Charlie to make a mental note, that I think this one is actually going to happen. And I also think that that President Trump, because he believes that the Constitution is a flexible document, he has been rolling out merchandise Trump 2028. So who knows what the future will bring, even though he is constitutionally prohibited from running for a third term.
But the question is, should you have people disrupting and let's say you agree with them, okay.
He has a right to do whatever he wants.
No, but is it good to exhort people to disrupt the country?
It depends on who's hearing it.
So many people were tired of all the protests, and people just kind of wanted an end to it, and people went into this second Trump term going, okay, let's not do what we did last time. Let's not wear the pink hats and go walk on Washington. Let's see how this goes. And how it's going is terribly. I mean, he's ignoring judicial orders. What do you do when the president is speculating that he doesn't have to follow what the Supreme Court says? If there's ever a time for protest, it feels like that's the time for protest.
Well, it's really a question. If you don't like Trump, and of course I don't like Trump, what's the most effective way to get the Republicans out? And I don't think that it is disrupting things right now. I think that it's letting them continue to mess things up. I mean, when people start getting their 401k notices this in the next couple of weeks and see how their retirement funds are looking, I think that's a wake-up call.
I agree, but that's also an expensive wake-up call.
Well, and there's a lot of people who don't have retirement funds. I understand that. But I think that he's doing so poorly.
But I think to get megaphones out is so yesterday in the sense that how did the Republicans change the federal bench? You know, they didn't go in the streets with megaphones. They work behind the scenes for the Federalist Society. How do we have all these gun laws that people don't agree with?
Wait.
How do we have gun laws people don't agree with? The NRA doesn't march in the streets.
I'll tell you how they did it. They put millions and millions and more millions of dollars in it, and the Democrats don't have that kind of money.
They sure do have that kind of money.
They don't.
The Democrats can outraise Republicans in return.
I agree with you, they have that money. I think the problem is this is not a 20-year plan to take over the Supreme Court. This is a more urgent problem. That's where, to me, it feels like...
Well, first you got to vote. And in the last election, only 62% of people in Illinois voted.
Nobody said this works if you don't vote.
Well, that's what Pritzker's got to do. He's got to tell people to get out and vote in his own state. It was horrible.
His state went for the Democrats. Illinois doesn't have to apologize for this. That all went fine.
Illinois is as blue as blue.
Yeah, it didn't matter if it was 98% turnout or 62% turnout. It's the same electoral college vote.
But in general, on many issues, if you don't get people out to vote, you're not going to win.
It is political theater in terms of, how far people decide to go when he's calling for disruptions.
And the message right now is don't give up. Don't be sad. Don't just throw your hands up in the air.
Let's move on. Sarah, I want to ask you what a week this was. Not a good one on the streets of St. Louis. First of all, there was the tragic death of a girl who was dancing on a Cadillac Escalade on Compton. I think it was Saturday night. She fell off the vehicle and then was struck by a emergency vehicle, a fire truck. She died. And then, coincidentally, I guess, TrailNet released a report indicating that pedestrian deaths are up in the city and the county, and we're not doing that well when it comes to bicycle accidents or car accidents either. What should be done in this area?
Boy, I mean, it's, look at these numbers from last year to this year, or we're looking from 2023 to 2024. These traffic deaths increased 187% in the city. Now, they had a pretty quiet year the year before that, and so it looks bigger than it was, but this is the highest year on record. They've been tracking these going back to 2010. I think this continues to be an issue where we've got some massive infrastructure problems. They broke down this report. TrailNet did a great job of showing where these accidents are taking place. And what's happening a lot is people who are dependent on using the bus system don't have access to safe crosswalks. And so they're crossing in areas where cars are going way too fast. People speed on our overly wide arterial streets. That's where a lot of this is happening. And they are calling to say, okay, we need to redesign some of these problem corridors.
But I think the new mayor has been saying again and again, there's a lot of reckless driving and the police have not been enforcing it. Not on the highways, not on the city streets. And in the case of the kids dancing on cars, that's not the first time we lost a girl who was dancing on a vehicle. It happened in 2020 on Washington Avenue. And we just know, how many wake-up calls do we have to have? We had the mother and daughter from Chicago who were killed outside the Drake concert. And you never see this kind of activity being pulled over by
Now, the
police
police
officers.
are saying they're doing this. In the last year, they have really proactively said, we've pulled over this many people here. They have the numbers to show for it. I think the driving got so out of control during the pandemic, and there's just kind of this selfish recklessness that has permeated the city that it has been hard to claw back, even with them being out there.
The only problem I have with anything you said, Sarah, is the over wide or the wide streets. Like the streets being wide has something to do with the people being reckless.
It does.
I don't think, I think that when we try to narrow the streets or put those little, whatever you call those.
Bump outs.
Bump outs. I think that's bad. I think that if we just ticketed more people and slowed people down that way instead of trying to narrow the streets or put bump outs out.
Yeah, I will just say that I think every pedestrian death especially has to be examined because I don't want to put somebody out there who it was no fault of their own that they struck somebody with their vehicle, and the whole vehicular violence. And it makes it sound like that you are at fault absolutely every time somebody is hit by a car, the motorist is, and that's not true. I'm not trying to be callous, but it's just not true. There's some people that will never be the same because somebody walked out in front of their car.
We have somehow, and I'm not a sociologist, but something has changed in our wiring. Somebody mentioned earlier the earbuds. We used to be more alert, but now we're just insulated. We're in our own worlds. We have those phones. They are our North Star. And I think to the exclusion of everything else, even when you're next to a traffic way, it's really kind of alarming to see the way people are driving, to see the way people react. Down in Grand Center, we see people jaywalking all the time. And I'm not sure what can be done about it.
And Wendy, I see those ear pods in Forest Park all the time. People walking along in their own little world.
Right.
And then, you have to cross streets in Forest Park, and they just...
and you can't hear horns.
Right.
You can't hear... So it's...
Well,
scary.
and you mentioned Grand Center, and Grand is the worst street, followed by, I think, Kings Highway and then Graveway.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating report, but actually Forsyth was one of the worst streets when it came to bicycles, which really surprised me. So
Well, Clayton, them people out of control.
something's going on. I don't get it. Yeah, it's not good.
Well, those bike paths in Clayton where you have the curb and then the bike path and then parking, people open their door, on the passenger side to get out, and the bicyclists are, struck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've
run
built all
into it.
these bike lanes. We haven't necessarily made them protected bike lanes. And I think if we're going to be serious about encouraging people to bicycle, which I 100% think we should, we need to build better bike lanes. But we like to do things on the cheap.
So, Alvin, this is the third week in a row that we're talking about a farm in Spanish Lake. This week, the county executive, Dr. Sam Page, said, hey, I understand as a doctor that people need healthy food. However, the award of $3.2 million to the Rustic Roots Farm in Spanish Lake violated, the county executive said, both the county charter and the state constitution. Among other things, there was no open bidding. So, will there be, or should there be, let's say, some sort of farm program in Spanish Lake? I contend there are a number of organizations which are providing food to people who are challenged in that area. In fact, I think your paper had a front page story with a hospital this week providing food to people who are hungry.
Right. Now, good intentions paved the road to where. All right. And this was a good intention, but it just was not done correctly. I think you do have to have some type of bidding process. I think the county executive was exactly correct in that all we're doing is leading ourselves down lawsuit path if we don't do it this way. And it's just kind of illegal the way it was done. And, I had my questions about it. And, it's just, maybe you could come back, try to do it a different way and get the job done. But it just seemed unsettling to me. Let's just put it that way.
So we had a story in St. Louis Magazine that said, you know, the recently former legislative aide of the councilwoman who was pushing this looks like very close friends, you know, traveling to Mexico, effusive messages in public with the woman who was getting this money. And it makes you wonder, like, did somebody just say, hey, I know this person, let's just give him $3 million of county money? That shouldn't be how it works.
It's so sad. I mean, I remember when it happened, and I thought it was a great idea. This kind of kumbaya, everybody, the county council voting as one, food, fresh produce for the poor people. And it's so disheartening to see that, well, actually, you know, Shalonda Webb's former aide was good friends with this person, and then 3 other farms that were part of this said, hey, we're backing out of it. And to see that it wasn't such a wonderful.
And it was those 3 other farms. You know, I mean, it's Shalonda Webb's ire is misplaced if it's on Dr. Page or the county government. And this is the second or third time that I've agreed with Dr. Page. So I'm not sure what's going on with me, but that's another story. I think he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right here. And because he did seem to be saying, let's hit the pause button, like Mayor Spencer. And, you know, he's going to reevaluate. And if there's a better way to build the mousetrap, then that's what's going to happen. But it was those 3 heroic other little farm organizations that said, hey, look, we don't have the infrastructure. This is not what it was sold. This was sold to us as a different thing.
And at least one of them testified in favor of the bill at the public hearing. It was all held on the same day.
Right.
But I just want to, I thought your story on Shantae Harmon Young was great. Yep. She vacationed with Jeanette Lewis in Mexico, and they had some nice photos on social media, which is a problem for everybody, I guess. You know, it always comes back to bite you. But there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to be clear. The problem is they should have had the open bidding. They should have had a competitive process. And they should have said, hey, in Spanish Lake and surrounding area, we have X number of people. We need some vendor to provide fresh food to these X number of people. Who can do it? So it could have been Mercy Hospital, could have been Operation Food Search, Urban League, and Rustic Roots.
Or it could be, like you say, but we do want some type of program where food is grown fresh and we can get young people involved and all that. But that doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's Rustic Roots that gets the $3.2 million that then doles out the money. I think it's an idea that's worth saving. It just needs to be maybe.
Well,
I think it's an idea.
If your county's $42 million in debt, you want to get into the farming business.
I said I think it's an idea worth saving. I didn't say it is an idea worth saving.
Wendy Wiese, how about this? A deputy in the sheriff's department, according to Chris Hayes of Fox 2, has been providing carpooling service for the 2 children of the St. Louis sheriff in a city-marked vehicle, in a city-owned vehicle, a sheriff's squad car, I guess it is. The kids go to the school, then they're picked up on company time. Should sheriff's deputies be providing chauffeur service for the sheriff's kids?
If this was a, you know, one and done, if this was one of those unique, just absolutely emergency situations, I would let it go. It doesn't sound like that's what it is. It sounds like this is sort of a considered a perk for the job, and it lends even more credence to those who are really concerned about our new sheriff.
Well, count me in that number. And I think that the new sheriff thinks that he's like a rural county sheriff who's really in charge of the county and sort of a king, like old Buck Berger used to be in Jefferson County.
Right.
Having deputies take your kids to and from school, and when he went to the jail and wanted to go talk to one of the inmates, he said, sir, you really don't have that authority. So he arrested the person. The sheriff just has the wrong impression of how important he is.
Yeah, he's not an emperor.
I hate to defend the sheriff. It is a very, very hard position as I stand up and walking the plank here. But a couple things. First of all, the sheriff's office is saying that this person was off duty when they did this work. I'm not sure who to believe in this. It feels like it needs further sorting out. the sheriff's office is a patronage position where the sheriff gets in and he hires all his own people. I could see it makes sense that the sheriff hires some trusted person for a job that gets off at 2 p.m. and that person also happens to be the person he wants to get his kid at 3 p.m. So I think somebody needs to find out, was this person on the clock or off the clock? That's the big question for me. The other thing is, I get that he's not the king of the universe, but I also get that, like, man, it's so disruptive to have to deal with young children. And so, you know, the fact that the sheriff can keep working and someone else is running this errand for him as opposed to him leaving his desk, there's a part of me that I guess really wishes I was the sheriff and had employees to do this.
Very nice and understanding.
Very kind.
I'm gonna say I should have called the chief of police to Gerwood to get my girls a ride to school. Someday I was busy. No, I honestly think that this actually did happen. That Andy asked Barney to run Opie to school one time. I honestly, you know, so that's where we're talking about.
It seems to be a daily occurrence.
No, this is problematic. I will say this. I think it's our friend Beavis Shock was quoted in there. I don't think the man should be summarily fired for this. This is just one of those
Slap on the wrist.
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's theft of honest services. You can't take a city property for your personal use.
I understand.
And he clearly did that.
I understand. I'm just saying it doesn't. To me, it doesn't go to the he should be fired level.
Now, haven't there been movies? Speaking of entertainment, where like the boss has the underlings babysit the kids.
Oh, yeah.
And it's horrible. I knew of a WashU professor who had researchers babysitting
Wow.
kids. And that's inappropriate. How does the employee then say to the boss, no, I'm not going to drive your kids to school. I'm a sheriff's deputy. I'm being paid by the city to do certain things. It's not driving kids.
What if he were paying her just like to drive him to school outside of a set? Like,
Well, there's still the use of the vehicle.
yeah, no, I know.
I suspect that if he were paying her to drive, he would have already used that as a defense.
This is the sheriff we talk about.
Alvin, there's a measure in Jefferson City that General Assembly is considering, and that is to allow kids who are homeschooled, and there are 61,000 of them in the state of Missouri, to participate in after-school activities at the local public school. So I guess it could be the theater department, or it could be the basketball team. Extracurricular activities. Should homeschool kids be allowed to participate?
You know, on the surface, this sounds like, okay, it's a good way to do, if you're being homeschooled, socialization, I think, is what you're missing when you take that route for education. However, I know athletics, and this will be a dodge for the kid who is academically ineligible. And he said, like, hey, we'll tell you what, he can't make his grades, but boy, he's a great player, so let's homeschool him, okay? And then there is no real academic record. I'm homeschooled, right? He said, like, so then, but I can now play the sport in my hometown or maybe the next town over. Who knows? So they ought to make sure that, look, you have to play where you live, but also this will be taken advantage of.
Well, the state, I'm sorry, Bill, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask Alvin, how many great athletes in high school do you think teachers are failing and can't play the sport? I mean, and I ask that seriously. I don't know.
There used to be more. The academic standard, like to play in high school, used to be a little bit higher, but it still exists. And there are still people at every high school, probably especially in the St. Louis area, that aren't playing a sport just because they are not eligible.
Well, whoever the state legislator from Columbia was, who was quoted in the story talking about how, there's no way to check up on their grades. The homeschoolers' grades are rarely an issue. They outscore many of their public school counterparts. Maybe not all of them, but just in terms of the SAT, the ACTs, they're not homeschooled because they can't cut it.
No, I'm not disagreeing.
Oh no, I know you're
what
not. I'm talking about
saying
Columbia. I'm talking about the Columbia.
What I'm saying is the kid that's already ineligible, the kid that's got straight Fs, suddenly will be now homeschooled.
I see what you're saying.
So he can.
Now let me ask you this: when you were going to Kirkwood High and you were an actor at Narix High School, did they check your report card?
let me put it this way. You could not be like on academic like probation and stuff like that. Yes, you just couldn't in any activity, even at another school.
Yeah, that was
there was
always
some
an issue.
standard. There was an
People would
issue.
have to drop out of the cast of plays because their grades went too low. They'd have to leave the football team. My high school was constantly struggling with this.
But
It is an
still,
issue.
your Nathan Detroit was a triumph.
Right.
It was a triumph.
Yeah, and
Everyone agrees.
I think overall, the homeschool kids' parents pay taxes, and they should.
I agree. I agree.
I'm just saying
I agree.
the one place it would be a problem is there.
Well, the
Then
other
you
place
will
would
be
be a
the new
problem
czar.
would be the yearbook. How could the kids be part of the high school yearbook if they don't even go to the high school?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a pressing problem.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't know yet.
I think we can survive that problem.
I think we'll work on it.
You know what? Homeschool students, I think, in many places, do attend that high school's prom. In smaller towns,
Yeah.
I really do believe they are part of the community, and they do go to the prom, even if they couldn't play a sport. I do think that does happen. So.
Well, then the next question is, how many towns over can the kids play? Let's say he or she grows up in, Kirkwood, for example. Would that person be able to play basketball at Vashon?
No, you got to play in your own district. I mean, that's the way the law should be.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
gotta
But
play
yeah,
in your own
if it's,
district.
let me put it this way, if it's not written like that, oh yeah, they'll be playing in Cincinnati. You know.
What would Deion Sanders have to say about it? Let's ask him.
Oh, sure, with Sanders. Okay, that's all the time we have for the first half, but we do have last call on YouTube. We'll tell you more about that in a moment. But first, how about those letters? Starting with Gary Copes. He's in Collinsville and wrote, 3 women last week on the panel. Way to go, Donnybrook. Thank you, Gary. We also heard from Karen McKinley of the city of St. Louis. The issue with citizen journalism is that you can have more followers and influence than traditional outlets, but you need credibility and facts first. The measure should be integrity over popularity. Thank you, Karen. You can write us care of 9PBS, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those emails, donnybrook@9pbs.org, and on social media, use hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Why not call the 9 line at 314-512-9094, and wherever you are on the planet, listen to us on your favorite podcast source. May I remind you that they're debating the future of public media in Washington, D.C. It's only $1.60 per American per year. We think it's very worthwhile for the important programming you get at 9PBS. And you can get involved by going to 9pbs.org/Y9 or visit protectmypublicmedia.org. Well, if you're a K-Hawk or you're a warrior or you know some, we're going to be discussing them on the 9PBS YouTube channel. It's the program we call Last Call when we get to some of the topics we couldn't broach in the first 27 minutes and 48 seconds. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome back, Bill McClellan, and we'll see everybody again next week at this time.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.